Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about easy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. You won't believe this. We are both recording and live streaming.
Holy
We're live?
We're live. We're live, baby.
Shit.
We'll do it live.
The system works.
And you know what it was? I uninstalled NVIDIA Broadcast. So somehow NVIDIA Broadcast, even in the background, was just like...
It's just a constant session.
It's just a session. It's a real Sunday session.
It is
with NVIDIA
constantly,
Broadcast.
concurrently a session.
Yeah.
If you've just started listening and you're going, who the fuck are these guys? The reason why we are so pleased is for the last 3 months.
No,
we
not
have
3
been
months. 3
able-
weeks. Calm
3
down.
weeks. About 4 weeks, maybe. We have not been able to broadcast live on Twitch because we have had too many concurrent sessions, according to the software.
OBS says, no, you're good. You're done.
So it turns out it was all Jensen's fault, and we can just move on now.
Jensen, what?
Is the head of the NVIDIA, like he's the one who always does the announcements of NVIDIA GPUs and softwares and things.
That was a pretty deep cut there, buddy. I don't know if you really should have expected me to get that right off the bat.
Anyone who knows what it, you know, graphics cards and shit. You know the memes, the spatulas,
Tom,
the spatulas, George.
For anyone who doesn't know,
am I speaking to nobody?
if for anyone who doesn't know, Tom works in IT. So. This is a news and politics podcast and obviously a technology podcast where we discuss the intricacies of live streaming with our live audience live.
I mean, we do frequently just talk about the intricacies of live streaming. Like
I complain about it.
Stream keys and shit. Yeah. And it's just like, is this interesting?
Is this something?
Yeah.
So top story on the news and politics podcast, which this is, top story, Donald Trump has been indicated.
Yay!
Woo! Did he indicate left or right?
No, he's been indicated by thugs. Okay, so
indicated by thugs.
If you look at his Truth Social, right, I'm going to quote Donald Trump's Truth Social, which Rolling Stone has I appreciate that Rolling Stone has gone to the trouble of screen capping this for me, so I don't actually need to go to Truth Social in order to view this content.
But they took the bullet, so you don't have to.
Thank you very much, Rolling Stone. It says, Donald Trump has truthed these thugs, capital T, and radical left monsters, capital R, capital L, capital M, have just indicated the 45th president of the United States of America and the leading Republican candidate by far for the 2024 nomination for president. There's a lot of stuff capitalized here for no fucking reason. And then this, all in caps, this is an attack on our country, the likes of which has never been seen before. It is likewise a continuing attack on our once free and fair elections. The USA is now a third world nation, a nation in serious decline. So sad.
Wait, holy shit.
That was amazing. Please read that again.
I've never noticed this about Truth Social screenshots before. So is their version of retweeting is referred to as retruthing?
Yeah, exactly.
Retruthing.
You retruthed it.
That is some George Orwell shit.
There was
right
a truth.
There. That is
and
some
then
double plus ungood shit.
Mate, it's retruthing a truth is double plus good.
Yeah. Oh, just like, yeah. Well, essentially, I have not read 1984 in a long time. That sounds like basically the business that the Winston works for, right? The retruthing department, basically. Like,
it is like beyond parody. That's the fake social network that Donald Trump put his name on top of in order to, reach the idiot masses is called Truth Social when it's literally just bathing in lies. It's just like, it's too, even George Orwell would go, that's a bit much. It's a bit on the nose. I don't think they'll buy it.
That's not exactly a believable near future autocratic.
The main character in 1984 works for the Ministry of Truth, which is all about spreading lies. Like, it is literally the plot to a George Orwell book.
And it is kind of funny that this has happened at the behest of people who I guarantee have not read 1984. It's pure coincidence. It's not an homage. You can't homage something you're not aware of.
No, it's
they just
what is
earnestly retruthing things.
Simultaneous when you both come up with something at the same time. It's like simultaneous. There's a word for it. It's like
determinism.
Swim freely in the depths of your own.
no, it's like
I can't think of the word to go into my sentence.
It was like Charles Darwin came up with the theory of evolution, and like somewhere, I think it was in France, there was another guy who was also working on a similar theory about evolution. And it's just like they both just happened to be sort of based in the same sort of scientific milieu at the same time and came up with similar ideas around the same time. There's a word for it, I forget, but like anyway.
Energy.
So so in case you missed that, Trump has been indicted or indicated as. And just by the way, the fact that this motherfucker is like so weapons grade stupid that like in something as serious as like a formal leveling of charges against you, you can't even like run a spell check on it. It's just like, bro, I can't, like,
well,
I just can't.
George, it was
I can't do another 4 years of this. Like, please.
It was clearly 3 a.m. and he was blasting whatever McDonald's he'd just recently eaten out his asshole while tweeting it. He can't focus on his spelling. He's
he tweets on the toilet. That's,
I don't know.
He definitely does. Remember all those tweets from like, in the lead up to his election and during presidency where the timestamps were at fucking weird times?
Yeah.
He was always like angry tweeting at weird places. And I bet he was shitting all the time with the diet that he seemed to have.
Well, if you eat that
Not
much,
shitting well.
If you eat that much McDonald's and drink that much Diet Coke, you're bound to have some spectacular bowel motions, I think, at odd hours.
Oh, just holy shit!
And I think we should be clear for posterity. He's been indicted by a New York grand jury. They had a grand jury. They said, we're going to indict you. And it's for the whole Stormy Daniels thing. That's the specific thing we're talking about. It's not for,
not
inciting a riot of the Capitol.
Reasons that they should indict him.
Well, I mean,
he paid a porn star to stop talking out of campaign funds.
So for those who don't know,
allegedly,
an indictment, okay, let's start there because not everyone knows what an indictment is. Certainly Donald Trump doesn't know how to spell it. Is a formal charge or accusation of a serious crime. So what happens is, in America, they have these things called grand juries. So it's a one-sided process where basically a prosecutor gets in a room with a jury of like 20 people or so, and they present evidence that they reckon a serious crime is being committed. Okay. And then what that jury does is they don't convict because you still need to have that oppositional process and go through the regular court process to get to that. But they can recommend that charges be laid or not. Right. But the thing with the grand jury is because it is a very one-sided process, the prosecutor gets to position the issue however they would like. And so the running joke is like that a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich. Like anyone who goes up against a grand jury is probably going to get indicted. Right.
Unless you're what was the murder with the young girl in the 90s? Oh, fuck! Now it's going to.
Are you talking about the Netflix documentary? I don't know.
It is also a Netflix. It is a Netflix documentary.
Help. Like, it was a famous murder. Netflix did a doco on
the staircase. Was it the stair one? I didn't see that one.
Murder. I'm just googling child murder.
Murder. We might be here a while.
Let's go. The 90s.
I'll circle back to you.
90s famous murder. Was it O.J. Simpson, Adam? Like, come on.
No.
What are you talking
O.J. was
about?
earlier than that, I thought.
Early 90s, I thought.
I thought it was late 80s. Doesn't matter.
No, I thought I thought it was like 92.
Now that the momentum is well and truly gone, left the show. So an indictment. Yeah, so that's what an indictment is. So the indictment, as of time of recording, is still sealed. So we don't actually know what's in the indictment. The articles have supposed, the media has been led to believe by sources close to the matter, that it's in relation to a hush money payment scheme. So you might recall Michael Cohen back in the day paid off Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. Stormy Daniels had Trump with an affair with Trump years before, or I think it was just once that they had sex. In order to prevent this coming to light and potentially interrupting his run for the presidency, Trump agreed to pay her off for $130,000. And because it was like, because
he directed Michael Cohen to do it, he then like passed it off as legal fees,
quote unquote. Yeah. So Trump says, "Hey, Michael Cohen, give her $130,000." Michael Cohen goes and does that. Trump then reimburses Michael Cohen plus a little bit extra for having done that. out of his campaign finances.
I think since winning the election, I thought it was when he
might have been after the election.
Happened. Yeah.
So the way this works, this like if this is what it is, and based on the reporting, it seems to be that it's kind of a little bit tricky because it's like a state law relating to, but it's like relating to a federal election. So it's like he's put together misleading business records, right? And there's 30 counts of that apparently. So multiple different times. So he's put together misleading, business records. But then that's a state law, but then it applies to a federal election campaign, which has its own federal like campaign finance laws. So if that thing that he did, lied about his business records, which is normally a misdemeanor, is in furtherance of a crime, then it can be a felony, which is a more serious level of crime. So it's kind of a little bit fucky how we get to that point where it's like, yeah, the thing is, he could have just, this is the thing, if he wasn't just such a cheap fuck, he could have just paid her. He could have just paid her out of his own pocket and it wouldn't have been, the cover-up is the crime, not the thing the cover-up is worse than the crime.
Yeah, if he wasn't so lazy and just dealt with hushing affairs himself.
Yeah.
Probably be fine.
It'd be fine.
Like, mate, front up and pay your own sex workers.
That happened to Nixon, where it was the cover-up of the whole thing, which was kind of almost worse than the actual break-in.
Oh, yeah. Extent. Well, I mean, so the cover-up was what?
Watergate.
Yeah. Yeah, Watergate
that old thing
is what Adam's referring to there. But yeah, essentially the same thing. The cover-up was worse than the crime. The cover-up of Watergate was what ended up being sort of dragged out in trials and hearings over the course of like a couple of years. And that ended up being what forced Nixon to resign rather than, I mean, I think what happened in Watergate, I don't think it's disputed, was a crime. Breaking into the Democratic headquarters to steal shit that might benefit you. The thing is he won the election shortly after that, in a landslide. He was he didn't need to do the crime. Like he would have won anyway. No. Because he did win. It's Nixon was such a fucking weirdo. Anyway,
it's a really good TV show on that. But anyway, John Benet Ramsey was the that I was thinking of. So
would not have got there.
In 1999, a grand jury, must have voted. They vote, whatever. They decided to recommend an indictment or charges against the parents for putting the child in safety, reckless safety. Basically, just say that they kind of did it, or put them in a situation where that they was sort of responsible. And then the DA was like, "I'm going to ignore that," and they didn't end up doing it.
Huh.
I thought there was the current thinking was that her brother was the one who was possibly responsible.
The parents, so the charge was putting the child in reckless circumstances or something like that. Yeah. But the DA was like, "There's not enough evidence," even after the the grand jury was like, "No, we should definitely."
That's the thing. Is grand juries just be grand jurying. I don't think you can really take that as...
They're just happy to be there.
Yeah. Just excited to be invited.
I think the thing about the Trump indictment / indication that is going to be quite interesting is that, from what I've read around, is that he has to appear in court in New York on Tuesday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And he's currently in Mar-a-Lago in Florida, and I think. Was it Ron DeSantis has sort of said
Meatball Ron.
I think has sort of said we're not gonna extradite him. Or
I don't know. But the thing is, the governor of the state doesn't have a say. That's not how not how anything works. So I don't know who he's trying to simp for there. He's trying to be like, we're not going to indict him because Donald Trump's the best, and it's a witch hunt, and they're going after him. It's like, Ron DeSantis, you are the person that's most likely to run against Donald Trump. Don't you want him to be indicted? This is just very confusing. This 12D chess they're trying to play with each other here.
He would be simping to appear good to Trump's base, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I stood up for him. Anyway, not the point. It's that
I stood up for him, but I'm going to take him down.
He's currently in Mar-a-Lago and has his own private security and all that sort of stuff. And as we know, he's previously called for, when he was 2 weeks early on his own alleged arrest, saying protect me or whatever, and he had a freedom moat or whatever they called it in front of Mar-a-Lago.
There was not. There was like 10 people.
Well, in New York, there was like 10. I thought there was a group of people in Mar-a-Lago, like not like fucking January 6th, but like a whole group of people. There's barely any there now. But it's the point is of like, he has to appear in court on Tuesday. What's going to happen between then? That's like, I think in US time, that's about like 36 hours away or something. Oh no, 48-ish hours away. So is he just gonna publicly we're gonna see like him leaving Mar-a-Lago in handcuffs? Are we gonna like, is there gonna be
his lawyers like they're not gonna put him in handcuffs. They're not gonna put him in handcuffs. I'm like, do you get to say that, lawyer? Is that a decision?
Here's the thing with high profile.
They negotiate surrender in this sort of thing, right? It's like you've been indicted. You have to come into court on Tuesday. You're gonna come. It's sort of a thing of like, if you're gonna come and you're gonna make this easy, out you come, off we go. But look, if you are like resisting this is an indictment order. This is essentially a warrant for your arrest. And if you are resisting that, then I don't know. Maybe that's when the beanbag rounds come out. Can you imagine?
Because in the arraignment, they'll just basically read out the charges. I wonder if the judge could be like, and you're ordered to stay off all technology and not say anything.
Oh, wouldn't that be amazing?
I think there's an aspect of that. I think a judge... I don't know. This is something I skimmed the other day, but I saw that, a potential outcome of this is that once proceedings start for whatever he's been indicted for, that he's told to shut the fuck up about it publicly.
The ultimate punishment.
Whether he'll respect that, I highly doubt. He's not very good at respecting, rules.
And there was already a thing of him, like he truthed a picture of him holding a base bat near Alvin Bragg,
who's the DA, right?
Who's the prosecutor?
Prosecutor.
Yeah, there's a picture of him holding a baseball bat next to Alvin Bragg's head, and it's like, and they're trying to tell you to go like, well, they're trying to tell us to be peaceful or something like that, and I was just like,
here I am threatening violence against the prosecutor.
Yeah, it doesn't seem good. It's just what a shit show. And what I don't understand is all the commentators being like, this might actually help Trump. He's had a boost in popularity. I was like, how could you have had a boost in popularity since you've been indicted for crimes? Like, how has that improved your chances? Like, I don't know, maybe in the primary, but certainly not in the general. I don't think there's a lot of middle America that's like, I want the guy that's been convicted of a crime. That's
maybe
my
not,
guy.
But I guess that the Trump base would all be like, it's the
deep
mainstream
state
media, deep state coming to get my boy.
Yeah, maybe. It's so like painfully stupid. The whole thing is just deeply upsetting for the entire country.
And it's just amazing to be seeing the insane mental gymnastics that's been going on from like the timeline of people who were all like, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. Biden wins, lock him up, lock him up, lock him up. Trump's indicted. Hey, we shouldn't pursue our political enemies.
Come on. Everyone just chill. Why are you going to be so uptight?
You're seeing that both with like just fuckhead numpties, but then also the fuckhead numpties on Fox News or whatever being like, hey, whoa, we should be coming together. Did Lincoln want to throw Robert E. Lee in jail? Like, man.
Maybe he should have.
Maybe he should have. Very, very funny. And people making claims of being like, what do you want us to do? Indict Bill Clinton next? This has gone too far. And people have been like, indict Bill Clinton.
I don't know, maybe.
George Bush while you're at it.
Yeah, I've got a list.
I got a list. So Trump is also, that reminds me, this is also another first for an American president that Donald Trump has set, that he's the first American president to be indicted for a crime.
Yep.
Which is wild, on top of his first to be impeached twice and first to incite an insurrection.
It's the first for a president, but I mean, back in the day, we were talking about Nixon before. Nixon had a vice president, Spiro Agnew, who basically...
Who people might know as the headless guy in Futurama. That's how I know.
Oh my God, is he in Futurama? That's hilarious.
Well, yeah, because there's the, Richard Nixon's head is president of Earth, and then he has the headless body of Agnew is the headless body going, and picking stuff up.
Amazing. What an inside fucking baseball joke for Futurama today.
That's all my knowledge of Spiro Agnew.
So Spiro Agnew...
He's the headless dude, and he was like part of Nixon's
He was so he was
administration.
he was his vice president, and basically was taking a lot of bribe money, kind of like, cashes and cash and jobs, literally like cash in brown paper bags type corruption from back in the day
good.
in
My
Baltimore.
laundry's done.
Look at this big bag of laundry. So he was indicted, and he ended up resigning and stepping aside, and that basically negotiated an agreement where the prosecutors said, "Hey, we're not going to press any of these charges, provided you resign. Spill the beans and resign, and you get to sort of gracefully leave." And this was like shortly before Nixon himself resigned, and so they knew it was a weird sort of parallel situation where they knew that Nixon was undergoing his sort of impeachment process and would likely resign. So the whole idea is like, we got to get this Spiro Agnew guy out because he's just like hilariously like cartoon level corrupt. And we got to get him out before Nixon resigns. So when he resigns, Spiro Agnew doesn't become president of the United States.
Yeah.
And they successfully did that. And that's why Gerald Ford stepped in.
Was the actual one that pardoned him. Yeah.
And then pardoned him. But since Gerald Ford, there's been this idea of like, oh, well, you can't convict a sitting president. You can't convict a, we just need to stop, and we need to let the nation heal. And there's all this sort of, like conjecture that basically Nixon negotiated with Gerald Ford and said, I'll resign, you get to become president, but you got to promise that you're going to pardon me, right? Which I'm sure happened. Like that definitely like we haven't got a record of it, but that definitely fucking happened, right?
Yeah.
So like there is some precedent for senior members of the executive branch being indicted and facing justice for their crimes. And I don't see, like, maybe while a president is being president, having them undergo these sorts of like accusations maybe isn't helpful. I could see how that could be bad for the country, bad for the presidency. But once they're no longer president anymore,
fair game.
Like, I kind of feel like it's fair game. Like, George Bush kind of is a war criminal. Like, that should definitely be a thing that we look at. Like,
but I think also definitely while they're still president, I think, like, I don't know, like, yeah, sure, it might hold things up or whatever, but like, I don't know, if
I think the fear is that it'll be used as a cudgel.
No, let me finish this.
Okay.
If in his first year as president, he like bombs an orphanage,
this is the thing.
A war crime, that's where you're like, hey man, we should prosecute that guy. We shouldn't go, oh, no, let's wait till he's not president anymore in potentially 7 fucking years. Then we'll punish him for bombing
I hear what
the
you're saying. I hear what you're saying, but I'm also aware that it can be used as a political weapon to basically, from the other side of politics, to stall an administration indefinitely while they're dealing with all of these different inquiries, right? That was the whole point of the Monica Lewinsky thing with Bill Clinton, was basically just the whole Starr report and dragging it on for months and months and hearings. And Benghazi with Hillary Clinton, they tried to do the same thing with her in the run up to her run for the presidency. Is basically just to bog the other side down with a bunch of like
legal bullshit.
Yeah, with a bunch of partisan legal bullshit in order to stop them from doing anything. So I get why it's probably not a good idea to have that happen during the presidency. But like you say, Tom, if Donald Trump just like strangles an intern and fucking kills her in the fucking Oval Office, like, are we really not going to prosecute that? Like, I feel like there's some things where to be like, oh, I think that should probably like he just like become like Jeffrey Dahmer becomes president of the United States and just starts killing young Indonesian boys on the floor of the house. Like, surely there can't be an exception for all crimes. Like, how is that possible?
So where's the line then? Is it murder? Is that literally?
But like presidents murder people internationally with drones all the time. Like, send people to war all the time. I would argue that like 9/10 of what any given president does is probably a crime somewhere to someone.
Remember when they drone striked the Iranian general just for
Soleimani.
fun?
Yeah. Legitimately,
when they nearly started World War III.
Legitimately a fucking war crime.
Like maybe World War III, and then COVID hit. What a first quarter of the decade, like the first quarter of the first year of the decade that was. Holy shit.
Like, to think about it back on that now, it's just like, oh yeah, Trump was fucking crazy. He was trying to nuke hurricanes, and he killed Soleimani and all this. So like, in the context of like that insane run of batshit craziness, it's like, it doesn't seem that nuts. But thinking back on it now, it's like, how would America feel if one of their senior generals was like drone striked in Mexico. Like that would
Miley,
cause
whatever his name was.
World War III. Like if you've just got like Stanley McChrystal just gets hit by a drone strike in fucking Cancun while he's on holiday, like people would be
on his head.
real pissed off. That's insane that happened, and it's even insaner that nothing came of it.
Anyway, I guess watch this space for whatever happens over the next week when Trump has to, like, he'll walk up and go, what's this? The consequences of my actions? Shit.
I thought I'd never see these again.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, in Australia, the Reds are coming.
The Reds.
Speaking of consequences to your actions.
The Reds are no longer under the bed. They're all over mainland Australia.
Except Tasmania.
That's why I said mainland Australia.
Mainland Australia,
yeah.
So
real Australia.
Real Australia. Not this shitty appendage, this little archipelago attached. Not even attached.
No, I love
though down there. So
I love Tassie. Hobart's better than most places on the mainland.
Tassie's great, and it's got good whiskey. All is forgiven for your Liberal government. So So as in another feather to Labor's cap, Labor candidate Mary Doyle has won a by-election in the federal seat of Aston in Melbourne's outer eastern suburbs. So just to give you an indication of another indication, we've had Trump's indication, now we've got another indication here. To give you an indication of how big of a deal this is, it's the first time in 103 years that a federal government that's in power when there's a by-election gains a seat. Okay, so Labor picked up a seat. It was formerly a Liberal seat under Alan Tudge, and turns out people didn't like all the things that he had to say about the things that he may or may not have done during the Robodebt Commission and the affair that he was alleged to have been conducting on his wife and all the various fun things that... anyway, so he resigned, forced a by-election, and not only did the Liberal Party not pick up a seat, which they were narrowly sort of, the polling indicated they were supposed to narrowly win this seat again in a seat that's been
retain, yeah,
in a seat that's been thoroughly Liberal since the 90s.
That is by right belongs to the Liberals.
Okay, can we just talk about that for a second?
Peter Credlin would put it.
Cannot fucking stand when commentators say, the seat of Aston, by rights, it's a Liberal seat. It's just because yes, it has historically voted Liberal for the last 30 years, since I was 2 years old, but that doesn't mean no seat is by rights any party's particular seat. You have to earn the votes of your constituents. That's how democracy works. That's how it works. Every time.
Liberal entitlement.
Yes. And that's exactly the kind of Liberal entitlement that's lost this seat. So Liberal candidate Roshana Campbell lost the seat and called Ms. Doyle on Saturday evening to concede defeat. And there was a very cute press conference today where Anthony Albanese was giving Mary Doyle a hug and, saying how good she'd done and, how proud he was of her. And I was like, this is just very cute. This is just cute and nice. I like this.
And he was like, sorry, I've got to go to the F1. Bye.
See ya.
And who was the... Roshana Campbell. Boy, did she lose it as well. Because... holy crap, everything about them running as a candidate was bananas, mainly in that they were quite parachuted in, as the expression sort of goes, that they weren't a resident of the area of the seat of Aston, but they assured that they were going to rent a place and move there if they win.
If you elect me, I'll move to this shit-stained suburb, but not until.
I'll only live there if you elect me. That's a good look.
Yeah, I've got my pied de terre in the CBD, of course. And that's where I'll be spending most of my time. But I suppose I can rent a flat out here if it'll make you fucking great unwashed plebs feel good about voting for me. So you might know that Roshana Campbell. So she's a woman of color. And I think the Liberals kind of cynically deploy that and go, well, this is what all you woke pieces of shit love. You love a woman of color. There you go. You'll sprinkle some women of color on it and that'll do us. It's like, no, what people care about is the policies. Like, yes, it's great that a woman of color is running. But she was running against another woman. So I don't know that it's necessarily it's kind of like cancels it out. I kind of feel like in the minds of progressives in that sense. I don't think anyone's looking at the Liberal Party policies and going like, oh, but she's, she's a woman of color, so I guess I don't believe in any of the things I believe in anymore, and I'm going to vote for her. Like, I don't think
a lot of the strategists are saying that the seat is got a large Chinese community, and that obviously over the last few years, the borders have been shut. And I probably don't know why I went with that accent, but
no one knows.
The borders have been shut anyway the last few years, which means, I guess a lot of that community are probably pretty upset with some of the way their family members have been treated.
By the Liberal Party federally, you mean?
By the Liberal Party government.
Fair enough. It turns out if you beat up on an entire community for years and years, they may not vote for you next time around, which is weird.
People have also laid a bit of this at the feet of like the likes of Josh Frydenberg as well, sort of in that region, being like, hey, so remember when you federal Victorian politicians were shitting all over us during lockdowns and everything through the peak of the pandemic? Remember when you were trotting out your friend of a friend's suicide to highlight that things were bad in Melbourne when you were the fucking treasurer that could have maybe done something? It's a huge, it's an indication of the indictment on the Liberal Party in that case. Like, you can't just fucking shit all over a state and expect them to still like you.
I think also it's like Alan Tudge, like for all of his problems, all of his many, many various problems, God rest his soul, if ever it is found.
Many problems
with Alan Tudge. He was quite popular in the seat. So you've got someone new to the seat, you're parachuting him into the seat, they don't even live there. Like, it's a historically unpopular opposition being led by Peter Dutton. Like, it was a pretty hard road to hoe for them to be able to retain control of this seat. Whereas conversely, Mary Doyle seems like a completely normal human being. Like during her victory speech, she said something like, so I guess I'm your member for Aston, hey? Everyone was like, yeah! Like, she just seems nice and like normal and relatable and like lives in the seat and like isn't married to Ham Rove James Campbell, who's who works the political editor for the Herald Sun, I believe.
That's also not a good look.
He's regularly on Insiders, and he is the husband of Roshana Campbell. National Weekend political editor for Saturday and Sunday News Corporation newspapers and websites across Australia.
I mean, I'm assuming that's not a rule, but it feels like it should be. I feel like if your spouse is the political editor of a newspaper, maybe you can't be a politician. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that just feels like a huge conflict of interest.
There's definitely
It's huge.
Just like, how was your day, honey? And he's just like writing notes.
He'd just be like, how was your day? How interesting I find that.
You should you see the mechanical keyboard in the background, like. You probably didn't get that. But
no.
Anyway.
No.
Is Roshana Campbell a genius? James Campbell reckons so. Yeah, it seems like a conflict of a conflict of interest would be the most generous way of putting that, I think.
Yeah. And then also this has been seen as a huge test of the popularity of Peter Dutton. And you know why it was seen as a huge test as that? Because Peter Dutton himself said it was. He said that this, was going to be a reflection on the leadership and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And they lost. They lost big time. Like, Anthony Green shared a map of here's the the voting spread of the two parties.
It was an absolute fucking
in May 2022. So when the Albanese government won, and it was a fairly quite a split. There was a lot of blue, there was a lot of red, and then this time around, what a difference! Fucking 11 months makes.
I see red. I see red. I see red.
Yeah, just everywhere. And so George, I know you watched it. Peter Dutton had to front Insiders this morning.
Oh my God, it was delicious. I didn't even know it was coming. I was just like, leader of the opposition, Peter Dutton, what are you doing here? You're just lost Aston. I was like, it must have been the cockiness of this motherfucker to agree to a booking on Insiders with David Spears the day after the Aston by-election. He was just like, mate, it's going to be a fucking victory lap. It's going to be so good.
Yeah.
The balls of this guy to go on Insiders not knowing, to agree, and then to still go, to know that they've lost, and then to still go on Insiders. And David Spears pulled no punches. They pulled none whatsoever. He's like, hey, so you lost in the Aston by-election last night. Why do you still deserve to be the leader? Oh my God.
Why do people hate you?
It's pretty delicious.
So why are you such a cuck piece of shit?
Yeah. It was like, you said this was a test on your own leadership and you lost the thing.
And you lost the test. Why are you still the leader?
Loser says what? Like, just fucking incredible.
I do wonder, you know, is it the Australian population is actually much more clever than I've ever given them credit for, or is it just that people hate Peter Dutton so much as to the reason as to why Labor's doing so well?
I think it's probably a bit of both. I think after the last couple of years, like maybe, you know, as more, you know, every year more people cross into voting age as well. So like, you know, the increase of younger people coming in to vote, and, you know, them demographic wise being definitely not more liberal than
it's not us, it's the demographics. It's not,
sort of
am
stuff.
I out of touch? No, it is the demographics who are wrong.
Yeah. But also, like, even some of the most lifelong liberal voters who aren't, you know, turbo fuckheads, have all
sick
been
of their
like,
shit.
yeah, but Peter Dutton's also like, oh no. It's like, yeah, I've voted liberal all my life, but I really don't like that Peter Dutton guy. Which I say, I hope he's the leader for a really long time. How do we keep Peter Dutton in this job? I want, like, what kind of retention policy can we work with here? Because I think he deserves to stay, quite frankly.
He deserves a review. He deserves an annual review and a star system. Is he meeting expectations?
Fucking
a performance plan in place?
What
if
would
he's
you
not
give him
meeting
for his?
expectations?
What would you give him for his values attainment? That's what I want to know.
Oh my God! Just double his salary. Anything to keep him in there.
Well, Australia needs you, Peter.
Yeah, it's a service to the country that he is the leader of the Liberal Party. I think it will have nothing but a net benefit.
So you've got, your Tom's right. You've got a bunch of different factors at play. One, you've got a uniquely uncharismatic ghoul of an opposition leader in Peter Dutton, right? You've got the demographic shifts, which is a real thing. Like, younger people are generally into more progressive policies, and the Liberal Party seems to be genuflecting to the right and neo-Nazis, and there's anyone who's under 50 thinks that's pretty uncool. There's also, like, the realities of, like, the Overton window on a lot of these policies has been pulled to the left. You know, the same people on who we were talking about climate change 20 years ago now have a very different view on climate change. Like, I take my parents as an example, right? My mum 20 years ago would have said that gay marriage was not okay, would have said that climate change was a farce, would have said that, you know, boats, stopping the boats was a good idea. My mum, who's in her mid-60s, holds none of those points of view anymore. Like, she voted for the gay marriage plebiscite. You know, she thinks that how we're treating refugees is actually pretty abhorrent now that we come to think about it. and what was the other thing? The climate change is real. You know, like, these were things I remember arguing with my parents about growing up. These are now mainstream views that gays are people and transgender people are people and should have rights like other people. But the Liberal Party has gone off on this lunatic fringe right-wing, you know, Fox News huffing their own farts bubble. And that's just no longer where the electorate is.
We think here's the thing, though. Is I mean, if they
Peter
drop culture war,
but Peter Credlin is saying they're not conservative enough. They've got to get more conservative, so people will respect your conservatism, and that's what will make them vote for you.
If they drop culture war shit and they just decide, well, let's just change our positions and all that, but they still are like, we're going to sell all government assets. Like, I think they would still probably do pretty well. It's the culture stuff that seems to be their biggest downfall. But they're not willing to give on any of the culture stuff, because the culture war stuff is what gives them life. Like, that's what they are genuinely. Like, they actually don't care about selling off
privatizing government assets, like, balancing the budget. Yeah, that's all good. We've always talked about that, I suppose. But like, what I really care about is giving tax cuts to corporations and making trans people feel like they shouldn't exist. That's what gets me out of the bed in the morning. So if I can't do that, what even am I? What is the point of the Liberal Party in this current world if I can't beat up on a minority of a fraction of a percentage of the population for being who they are? Like, what's the point?
Yeah. Oh, I just fucking love as well that we've had 2 incredibly salty photos of Peter Credlin in as many weeks. Like, it's just a lovely little treat for our March-April period. Just, it's delicious. I couldn't have another bite.
There's also been, like, federally, we're coming off 9 years of LNP governance as well. And that's also the case, I'm sure, in what state was it? New South Wales just turned red as well. So it's like they've had 2 or 3 consecutive terms of government. So I think that's part of it as well, is basically just the Liberals have had the reins for so long in so many different places that
people are over it.
People are over it. I think that happens every so often, is people just swing back to the other side because they've had enough of the previous side and they've gotten too corrupt and bloated and fat and full of their own,
that's
bullshit.
Democracy.
That's democracy to a certain extent. It just does seem interesting that it's also lining up with these demographic changes. Australians are more sort of moderate centre-left in their thinking now. Like, I think a lot of these dominoes just happen to be lining up all at the same time to the extent that, basically everywhere except Tasmania now is Labor.
And Tasmania like the Liberal government down there has done really well.
Well, they seem to be the most progressive of all of the state Liberal governments. So
they're very progressive from a state Liberal government's perspective. The other thing being, though, is that they have been in power now for, like, I'd say over 10 years. It's been like 3 election cycles. They're up to their 4th premier in that time period. There's been a couple of like changes of premier. So there's not the thing with Tassie politics is there's not a whole like plethora of people just to walk in. Like, one minister will be the minister for like 10 different things.
There's not a deep bench in Tasmania because they're all related.
Yes, yeah, basically. No, they've actually got a smaller parliament, which is potentially a bad thing. But anyway, I guess the point being is that it will probably shift, I think, to Labor just out of like following this trend, and because people are just like, they want something different. But last election, Rebecca White was smashed. She's a Labor leader, but she's not unlikable. It's just I think local politics play out in those states a bit more strongly than they do nationally. So Tasmania may buck the trend. Who knows?
But if I look at from a federal perspective, Bridget Archer was one of the few Liberals to retain her seat in the federal election. And she's the one who's been more progressive. So I think if the Liberal and National Party don't start learning that they need to meet the public where they are, like that's how elections work, is you meet people where they are and give them things that they want in order to get them to vote for you. If they don't seem to start figuring that out, we could have an entire generation of like single party rule in Australia, which I'm like, look, I'm not against, provided it's my party. But like, I do think that, for like us to have a healthy democracy, it's important that 2 parties exist and have differing points of views and all that sort of stuff. But if the LNP don't give people what they want more, they're just going to be relegated to irrelevance for the next couple of political cycles. And I don't think that's really good for anyone, much as I personally enjoy
it. And
if
Anthony Albanese remains Prime Minister, his list will get worse as time goes on. And then, you'll get issues like the other day where he finished the press conference and he goes, "Have a good day, sex." Walked off.
I didn't say that.
But he basically pronounced the TH as an S. And it sounded like he was saying sex. I was like, okay.
Fantastic. Give him another 3 election cycles. He's even more popular now.
The man has a lisp. Let's not.
He's even more popular now than when he was elected.
Cute.
Like the guy, it's people want compassionate, fairly progressive leadership. They got some stuff done on climate action this week and the safeguard mechanism. Don't everyone turn off and talk about the safeguard mechanism. But essentially, what seems to be like an emissions trading scheme, right? So don't say it. Don't say carbon tax, otherwise everyone will start freaking out. But like big progressive things are happening quietly. Maybe not as progressive as the Greens would like, but they're happening. And it's all because
are they
of...
still approving new coal and gas projects?
So, yeah, not to get too deeply ensconced in it because we've got other stories. But yeah, essentially, yes, but the threshold that they would have to meet in order to be able to actually allow that is kind of prohibitively high. So it's like they're not agreeing with the Greens in that they're saying like no new coal and gas because they can't, because they're Labor and they're sort of backed up by the unions. But in practice, it makes it really difficult for new coal and gas projects to get up. So I think that's the sort of unhappy compromise.
We kind of need new gas projects at this point in time.
The world, given that
we don't, Adam.
The commodity prices are so high, you would say that there's a global need for gas. Australia could
either that or they need to replace gas really rickety tick. Like in the next 6 months, because that's not going to happen.
We need to start strapping batteries to people and just sending them off their way like carrier pigeons.
Gas prices are making manufacturing, because this is the other thing. Like the government they just passed the what's it called? The Reconstruction Fund. Do they pass it, or are they still in negotiation with it?
I don't know. I haven't been reading about
National
this.
Reconstruction Fund. They want to make a fund which will help support manufacturing in Australia. We need to make things here to help our supply chains, which is all very well and good. But to make things here is prohibitively expensive because gas prices are so high. One of the reasons, but that is one of the reasons.
Because it's a global commodity.
Yeah, like there's stories of people like brick manufacturers that can't heat bricks properly because the gas is too fucking high.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you've got to lower some of those costs somehow to have cheap energy to be able to be more productive. But, by the same token, you can't also destroy the environment. So this is where the former Liberal government was like, we're going to have a hydrogen-led recovery. It's going to be great.
I don't
know what's happened with any of that, by the way.
No, because there was nothing there.
What's happened to this policy?
It's dissipated like so much gas into the fucking atmosphere because there was no there. They got a bunch of gas executives on a board. And so how are you going to help us get out of the coronavirus recession? And the gas executive said, gas? And they said, great idea, gas executives.
Yeah,
you got this.
Gas executive suggests more gas.
Yeah. Shocker.
Horror.
And look, there's plenty of gas in Australia, but a lot of it is in particular so you go to Western Australia, for instance, it's all Western Australia controls all that. You can't just teleport it across to the east.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's shipped offshore anyway because there are contracts and yada yada yada. So, but the East Coast, particularly Victoria, New South Wales, there are issues with gas supply, residential gas supply, and commercial gas supply,
and our energy costs for the next year. There have been stories about this. They're projected to go up 20 to 30% over the next 12 months, in no small part due to the availability of this gas. So, it is kind of a tricky one because, Adam says, unless we electrify everything tomorrow, we're going to need this gas. Otherwise, people aren't going to be able to afford to heat their homes over the winter. It's going to get pretty bad.
Ultimately, it's the whole reason we're here is because the government has sat on this issue for 20 years.
Yeah.
And because they haven't been more progressive with upgrading energy infrastructure, electrification, efforts, making sure that the grid is upgraded, and because of it, and because it's all been privatized. We're at the point now where Dan Andrews is going, I think I might have to buy back,
start up the SEC again. The State Electricity Commission.
Because it's so broken.
Yeah.
The system isn't working.
Oh, he basically said as much in his victory speech. One of the main things was and we're going to fucking unprivatize this State Electricity Commission because everything is really fucking broken.
To be fair, energy policy has been the death of Australian politicians
multiple prime
for the
ministers.
last 15 years.
Yeah.
Rudd, Gillard, Turnbull.
Turnbull again.
Turnbull again, yeah. So, it's been an issue you can't touch. And because of that now, this is why we're here. The pandemic hasn't helped.
Yeah.
But
all
of
this aside, new gas projects that are announced and greenlit now are going to take years before they're fully in production. So I don't want to make it seem as though
gas is the ultimate save.
Gas is the solution. Starting a new gas project tomorrow is going to yield dividends by the winter, because that's definitely not the case. But
No, it's true.
there is a systemic problem that until we've got the economy fully electrified, like no gas stoves, no gas, hot water heaters, like until everything is fully electrified and everything's being run off solar power with battery backup, until that happens, which I think is another 10, 15 years away, unless all the cars run off electricity, which, they're still not, like you're going to have this problem of like, how do we transition to a greener economy? And just no one's done the legwork that needs to happen for us to be in the position to go to a fully electrified economy at this point. This should have been happening 10, 15 years ago.
You can't go completely electrified because, again, there are certain industries that need to literally...
Oh, like if you're making steel, like you need to have fossil fuels in order to make that happen.
Well,
I acknowledge that there is
hydrogen.
There are some like industries and manufacturing that require fossil fuels to some extent, but I guess I'm talking about the transformation of the broader economy into
which then compensates, right, for the
right. If the emissions everywhere else go down, then you can have your steel manufacturing. That's fine. We need steel. We can't get around without steel unless someone figures out something, some new technical innovation.
The Australia Institute, I think it was the Australia Institute, this week literally put a report out though being like, car emissions are going up in Australia and it's because everyone wants their fucking Nissan tradie ute. It's just the amount of like big cars, soccer mum cars that are coming out and just like, tradie utes.
Yeah,
like
everyone loves a truck. Yeah. It's like in the US. In the US, you drive around, you see everyone's driving these big fuck-off trucks and go, I'm looking at you fat pricks. I don't think you guys are trading. I think you're just some office worker who wants a big fucking truck for some reason.
Australia is bucking the trend.
Yeah.
Where like the big car usage in the US is coming down slowly. But in Australia, it's skyrocketing.
Well, I look at the car that we just bought. Like we just bought an SUV, right? It was a hybrid. But that hybrid cost, if we compared that to the petrol version, we're probably going to spend another 20-something grand buying the hybrid as opposed to buying the petrol version. So like, I get it. If you've got a family, you got a couple of kids, you're going to have to load prams into the car. Yeah. You want to have a bigger car for that sort of stuff. But the ability to get a car like that fully electric is just prohibitive. Like even getting it as a hybrid is still much more expensive. So getting it as fully electric is even more expensive again. Yeah. Most people can't afford $100,000 for a fucking car, right? Like,
that's the big hurdle for electric vehicles is like not even just for families and all that, but actual tradesmen as well. Like the ute or the pickup truck or whatever you call it overseas. But like the ute being able to do the same distance, like the same mileage and haulage that the petrol ones do is something that's prohibitively for it.
They're going gangbusters.
Oh,
but
God.
Just because of the impact of it. And I always find that really interesting. In that, to electrify those kind of vehicles, they need to be able to do what the petrol ones can, or otherwise it actually just like there's no incentive for a tradesperson to get one.
Well, to spend an extra 20 grand to do so, right? It's got to be worth it for them to spend more money.
It makes their job harder. So,
or you got to subsidize it. So it's the same price. And then
which is why every problem we've spent the past 10, 15 minutes talking about would be solved by $1 trillion coin.
No. Tom, in a time of 8% inflation, I don't think we can talk about the $1 trillion coin anymore, buddy. I think that ship has sailed.
No, and it all just subsidizes shit, does not have to go out into people's pockets or into the economy. The government's just handling it.
I would like to state for the record, Tom is not a macroeconomist. This is not financial advice.
The Inca Empire, the economy of the Inca Empire last night on SBS, and also through a bit of doom scrolling on Wikipedia. So they had what was effectively communism. So basically there was no currency. You just... Everything was like goods exchange for favors,
barter
kind of thing.
System, kind of Burning Man economy.
Yeah, the tax to the government was like, you help me build my temple on the mountain, or you go and fight a war for me, and that's then you can go back and they will give you a bit of land you can farm and live off, and away you go. Agrarian society, and Marx is like, why can't we do that? And because in this day and age,
because capitalism already existed, and they probably had anyone who liked those ideals fucking murdered.
I mean, you could also argue the Spanish
they gave them smallpox.
Put an end to that pretty quickly, but
Yes, yeah,
Anyway.
that's usually what happens to those kinds of societal constructs is white people or European people showed up and killed them all.
Yeah, capitalist imperialist came and said, it's my way or the highway, buddy.
Yep. I believe slavery and colonialism killed a lot of those ideas.
How did we get onto that?
Yeah, I don't know.
I said something about $1 trillion coin, and then Adam brought up the Incas.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just saying it's an alternative system, which won't work, but it is a system nonetheless.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our system can be a bit clunky at the moment anyway. In relation to just how our parliament just kind of operates a little bit, which saw a bit of a snafu happen in the past week, just in a bit of a smaller story, where a bunch of coalition Liberal National Party MPs injured someone who worked at Parliament House trying to avoid doing their jobs, which is voting on stuff. There's a whole thing in Parliament, right? That when you're voting on an issue, or like when an issue is about to be brought to the floor and then people have to do their voting and all that sort of stuff, the Speaker of the House says, like, all right, we're ready to vote, lock the doors.
Shut the doors.
Shut the doors. No one can come in or out until the vote's complete. And then when he says that, people start shutting the doors. Now, a rule that hadn't been sort of established with regards to that was that once he says, like, as the Speaker, Milton Dick, puts it,
once Mr. Dick says
rule,
close the doors
then that is
shut.
effectively the doors are locked.
Yeah.
Like, you can't try to leave while the doors are being closed. Like, that's it's the equivalent of the on your driving test, do not say that the yellow light means floor it. It means stop.
It means come to a safe stop.
It means come to a safe stop.
The obvious option on the multiple choice. Should you A, hoon through like an absolute sick cunt, B, floor it, C, fucking smash a couple of cones, bro, or D, stop at a safe distance when safe to do so.
Yeah.
And if you are a bunch of the coalition MPs, it's option A, hoon through like a sick cunt.
So they were about to, the lower house of parliament was about to vote on a bill proposed by the Labor government on income management policies when 7 coalition MPs went, wait a minute, we don't want to vote on this, and piss bolted for a door, which had a woman working for Parliament House was shutting the door at the behest, and they just barged through it and like were, jimmying their way through it like fucking lemmings, just trying to get out there to the point where they injured her. They injured her arm is the detail that's sort of in here. But so, yeah, they just plowed their way through a woman just doing her job to try not do their own, which is vote on shit.
I've never understood
you're just doing your job.
Why they don't want to vote on certain things. Tony Abbott did this once.
I remember
where he
this.
did exactly the same thing. You see him like sprinting up the stairs.
Out. I guess they don't want to be
because no one got hurt.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is just disgusting that they're just like, we want out. Oh, there's a woman in the way. Whack. We want to go through. Like, Jesus Christ.
Could you just imagine you're this woman and you just see I don't know what you would call a group of LNP members like this, maybe like a liar of LNP ministers, a smirk of LNP ministers barreling towards you. You got Angus Taylor, Andrew Hastie, Dan Tehan, just a throng of red-faced white men, just
a white smudge,
just barreling towards you as you're trying to do your job of closing the door. And you get fucking knocked over. Like, it's unreal. Like,
yeah, it's just
they all had to then apologise.
Yeah, they all had to stand up and go, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry
that I plowed into you at the door. Sorry, Mr. Taylor, a little louder, please. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Gosh. Did I hurt your arm? Gosh, can I go now?
So genuine. Just very genuine.
It's unreal. Like, I know, when the Tony Abbott situation happened a couple of years ago, I think that's because he discovered that he was voting on the same side as someone else. Like, someone crossed the floor to join them, I think, in that situation.
A lot of times it's about having...
We can't be seen with them, and just tried to get out. And you just see it on the footage that they just stand up and sprint for the door, and it's quite funny.
A lot of times it's about having their vote on record. It's like they know the vote is going to pass or not pass regardless of them, and so they just don't want to have to be on record saying that they chose one side or another. They can maintain ambiguity for sort of convenient political reasons,
which is absolutely fucked, because this is like, politicians do many things in the scope of their job, but I feel voting yay or nay on legislation is kind of, if I had to pick the one thing that I would say is fucking Angus Taylor's job, it is to be there to vote yay or nay on shit.
Yeah.
Everything else is secondary.
Or you could abstain, though. If you're in maybe it's in the American system where you can abstain.
They can abstain in some context, but I guess they probably also want, that would be on the record too.
An abstention,
That you're an abstention means, and that says something as well, right? Like, there's you voted for it, which means we have on record that you are for this policy. We have on record that you're against this policy, and we have on record that you were in the fucking room and refused to take a stand.
Yeah. Or you were just not present.
You just weren't there, like not in attendance.
Oh, I was off that day.
I was sick that day. I was sorry, there was some barrels that needed porking or whatever the fuck. Fucking disgusting. And a woman in her workplace got hurt as a result because they're fucking too cowardly to actually vote on something.
Nice job. Well done, Angus.
Yeah. Fucking morons.
Meanwhile, in the Senate, everyone's calling each other nasty names.
The Senate does seem to be quite wild with people calling each other nasty names. Like, I know that fucking the lower house...
It does seem a bit spicy, doesn't it?
All like, order, well, the minister for blah, 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 shut the fuck up kind of stuff. But the amount of times it's like someone speaking in the Senate and Pauline Hanson's like in the background, or just any of them are yelling about stuff. It seems way more spicy.
It's very spicy, and it's a bit confusing. So obviously we talked about the Nazi rally, which wasn't a Nazi rally, but it was a Nazi rally.
I hate that that's such a normal sentence to come out of your dumb fucking face.
We were talking about the Nazi rally that happened. We were talking about the Nazi rally last week, and our brains didn't explode from being like, we have Nazis again in 2023. I thought we were. It's not 1923. No, it's 2023.
Indeed.
War comes soon. Anyway, so following that, the Victorian Liberals with their new leader, what's his name? Did we say before the show? Prosciutto? No,
John Pizzuto. And Pizzuto. I want 13 slices of prosciutto, and I want it thin. And I also want 500 grams of capers. But I cannot stress this enough. You want to cut that prosciutto? You cut it thin.
So he was pushing, as this first test of his leadership, he was pushing to have the Victorian Liberal MP in the state parliament, who basically was at that rally supporting the transgender thing. She wasn't there for the Nazi thing.
Who helped organise it?
Helped organise the anti-transgender thing, I should say.
Yeah, organising the event that that woman from the UK to speak at.
Posey Parker Posey.
Yeah, I think Parker Posey's the actor.
Not the actress from Best in Show, who's amazing. Posey Parker.
Which is like her pseudonym. She's actually got an actual name. Yeah. Anyway. So...
Are you saying she identifies as something else than her birth name? That's interesting.
Yeah. So, the Victorian Liberals tried to push her out, but then in a great show of faith, the rest of the party room in the Victorian Liberal Party was like, no, let's keep her. Like, she's really sorry.
So the
TERF, it was really wild.
The TERF, trans-exclusionary radical feminist / maybe Nazi-curious side of the state Liberal Party outvoted the anti-that side, which is interesting. But,
So, as a response, in the federal Senate, Senator Henderson, who's a Liberal senator, first name is Sarah Henderson. She was trying to further push the Victorian Libs to basically oust Moira Deming, trying to put more further pressure on the Victorian Liberals, right?
Oust Moira Deming.
to oust Maura Deming, and the coalition is actually seeking a ban on Nazi symbols after last week's rally. But in her speech,
hang on, what's Dominic Perrottet going to wear to his to his next birthday party? Then that's no good.
Just a big sign saying sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll be fine at whatever consulting gig he.
Whatever.
He's still in Parliament, technically, isn't he? No,
I assume he won his seat.
He won his seat, I think.
He won his seat. Anyway, so Senator Henderson was making a speech at which time she is alleging that a Labor senator said something pretty nasty to the point where she's now gone, I'm going to dob on you, and I'm going to... Where is it?
Oh, do you want
George has the clip. Clip lined up.
To fracture that
Senator
unity...
Birmingham, Senator Birmingham, could you resume your seat? Senator Watt. Senator Watt. Order. Senator Cash, just a moment. Senator Henderson, please resume your seat. I will come back to you. I've asked you to resume your seat, Senator Henderson. I've asked you to resume your seat. Senator Cash, I'm going to ask you to withdraw that remark.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Senator Henderson.
President, Senator Watt said the most disgraceful thing, and he's to withdraw it. I am disgusted in you.
Thank you, Senator Senator Henderson. I did not hear the remark, but in the interests of the Senate, I'm going to ask you to withdraw.
Madam President, I withdraw. I refer to the text messages that Senator Henderson said. That's what I said. I withdraw.
Thank you. Order. I think we just need to take a moment.
So,
good God, being the Speaker of any house must be the absolute fucking worst.
Senator Henderson, I said take his side.
It just sounds like herding cats. But yeah, wow. Oh my God. Like,
Senator Watt
didn't hear
said
the exact comment that Murray Watt said, but geez, that she was very upset. So I imagine it was something pretty cutting.
Senator Watt said he simply asked the Liberals why they were not condemning their own senator for supporting a colleague who, quote, recently stood with neo-Nazis, which is a fact. This is a thing that happened. I don't know the wording. I don't know how he said it. It might have been very mean-spirited, but these be facts. So
Sarah Henderson has now contacted the Parliamentary Workplace Support Service.
Okay.
Over the comment.
Well, I mean, it depends what he said. Like, I mean, you could be right in the sense of like, hey, here's a contradiction, or you're being what's the word I'm looking for?
Maybe don't be part of the party that's that has people in it that are kind of chill with neo-Nazis then.
But you can do that, I think, without saying something that breaks the composure of her. Like I don't know. Yeah, that felt quite genuine to me.
The coalition's policy
rattled.
is that they are trying to. The federal coalition's policy is they are trying to ban that. But
it wasn't that long ago But it wasn't that long ago that George Brandis hopped on the floor of Parliament and said everyone's got the right to be a bigot, you know. It's of the two parties. If you were a neo-Nazi and you had to pick one of the two major parties, which party would you pick?
One Nation.
Yeah, Pauline Hanson's One Nation's One Nation.
Jeez, we didn't even get to fucking what Mark Latham did this week.
Oh, yeah.
Holy fucking shit.
Mark Latham from Pauline Hanson's One Nation.
Yeah, and almost the fucking PM of the country one time.
Turns out
broke my brain.
He doesn't like homosexual people.
He doesn't like gay people.
I heard that he tweeted a bunch of stuff that was homophobic, but I don't actually know what the content of the tweets was.
I don't want to say it. It's pretty bad.
Now I got to look it up now. Now I'm curious.
There'll be screenshots somewhere, but it's particularly disgraceful, and to the point where I saw articles actually saying like One Nation is split over divide in One Nation over the Mark Latham tweets or whatever, and it was that that Pauline Hanson was like, he's dodging my calls and I'm demanding him to apologize for what he said. And I'm like, whoa. There's a division going on in One Nation and Pauline's on the right side.
keep in mind.
I don't mind transphobia. I don't mind racism. I hate the Muslims. I hate the Asians.
Yeah.
But one thing I cannot stand is homophobia. I love queer over the straight guy.
Keep in mind, I'm pretty sure James Ashby is still like one of the head honchos as part of One Nation, and I'm pretty sure he's, gay.
The only thing I know about James Ashby is he likes to get on the sauce.
I was about to reference that. That's the only thing I know about James Ashby.
You've got basically one of the main power brokers of that party. It's like, and then the other guy's like, I think I hate you, base. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's like, there's only like 4 of them in the parliament. Like, how do they reconcile that?
Yes, and just what he said was absolutely horrific. So, it's one of those.
I don't think James Ashby is gay.
Oh, I thought he was. Maybe I'm wrong. Look, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But I there was a point there where I thought he was.
One Nation spokesperson, this is from October 2022. One Nation spokesperson James Ashby, who serves at Pauline Hanson's chief of staff, says the pride flag represents more than gay rights, labeling symbol of promiscuous sex, drug use, HIV, and monkeypox.
Okay, so maybe like the opposite of that. Yeah. So in that case,
oh wait, no, you're right. To me, and I'm the only gay bloke on the panel here, but I'm sorry, I won't wave the rainbow flag at all. So you're right, Adam. I stand corrected. He is gay. He just doesn't. He just really hates the flag.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
But yeah, so I mean, what Mark Latham's New South Wales One Nation or something like that?
So
he's in the Legislative Council.
Used to be leader of the Labor Party federally, and there was that weird clip of him like aggressively shaking John Howard's hand, shaking the shit out of John Howard like he was an unwanted baby.
Yeah, the handshake. Oh fucking hell, that's a sentence. Just shaking John Howard's hand like he's fucking trying to rip his arm out of his shoulder.
Trying to do a finish.
You know what I mean? Like
you've got one of the
Mortal Kombat power brokers there.
A Mortal Kombat finishing move on
John Howard.
On John Howard ripping his arms out.
You've got, one of the chief power brokers of One Nation, who that obviously insults. And then you've got probably one of the main, stars of the party, shall we say, saying shit like that. Like, it's going to ruffle some feathers.
That's to put it mildly,
Yeah.
So shit.
It's good to see that, both houses of parliament are functioning well.
Meanwhile, we're just living up to our Westminster system roots. Like, if you've seen the British Parliament ever, it's full of this sort of shit. So,
Well, it could be worse. We could be just like the Israeli system, in which at the moment things aren't too bad, but we're getting to a point.
Really?
Where...
Did I miss a story where it was like things are going great in Israel?
So traditionally, the actual system of government in Israel is actually pretty progressive. There is a separation between church and state. The High Court can intervene and do different things. I guess the point being is you can't have, you can't sort of stack the deck, so to speak, in Israel at the moment. There are checks and balances.
And basically, this legislation that Netanyahu's trying to push through would sort of overrule the independent judiciary. Basically, if we don't like what you do as the judiciary, we as the executive get to just overrule you, more or less. That's how I
overrule you.
So
and appoint judges, just like the US does, but without any
oversight.
Yeah. So to be clear, so what's happened is Netanyahu was the Israeli PM. He was very popular for a while, very divisive, and then he was charged with corruption. Lost the election. Then came back, won the election, but the charges are still ongoing.
Pending,
And as part of his comeback, the reason why he's done that is he's basically gotten together the coalition of conservatives from several different factions within Israeli politics and put it together into this massive like conglomerate of conservatives, like it's like creating its own gravity of conservatism, and he's managed to sort of center them around himself. Now,
including
part of that,
a guy named Itamar Ben-Gvir. He's appointed him as the Minister of National Security, and he's like, I'm struggling to remember the details of his background, but I believe problematic would be an acceptable word to use.
One of the main parties is basically they're a bunch of religious zealots.
Yeah,
to put it mildly, like there are people that will say that's wrong, but there are religious conservatives as part of this coalition, and one of the things they want is to have a greater, to mingle in the religious aspect, to the way the government operates, basically,
which has always gone swimmingly.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of things that this bill would do. It would basically give the government, the parliament, or the government of the day, the power to appoint the judges. It would give the ability of the government to overrule or to have greater power over the court. And there's a bunch of other things as well, which were sort of as part of this package. And the Israelis, generally speaking, took it really well.
Did not love it. So
they did not love it.
To the extent that like, okay, we're not flying planes anymore. Like, we are going to grind this fucking country to a halt until you suspend this legislation. And they did. And there are even people saying, reservists saying that they wouldn't serve this would essentially make the country a fascist state, and they're only going to serve under a democracy. So it's impinges on the ability to like undertake military actions and like literally like grinding the country, the country as a whole to a halt in opposition, like millions of people protesting this legislation.
Yeah.
I was like fucking
French scale,
just French yellow vests, kind of like burn it all down. I'm like, yes, get it, girl. Get it, Israel. Why can't we have industrial, like countrywide level action on that scale where it's like, yes, this is like so manifestly wrong and corrupt that everyone in the country just goes, nope. Like,
so he hasn't gotten rid of the policy.
He's shelved it for the moment.
He's shelved it for a month because a month is long enough to sort of sort it out. But the thing is, like,
keep legislation up there for a month.
You're gonna get an infection if you keep it up your arsehole that long.
But he's kind of painted himself in the corner here.
Yeah, the idea is he's waiting for some of the steam to go out of these protests, and he's going to take another run at it again in a month. But like, I don't see that happening.
And
like, people seem
will just
real pissed off.
Grind the country to a halt again.
Yeah. People have shown their willingness to like burn everything down to make sure that they live in a democracy. I love the enthusiasm, the fervor, where people are just like, no, we're not doing that. We as a country have decided we're not doing that.
Even like Biden, who like the US is like the key Israeli ally, right? You wouldn't have Israel without the US.
Yeah.
Even Biden's like, yeah, that shit's fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that.
It's one thing we love. It's freedom and democracy.
Literally. I think he literally said that.
Yeah.
Like,
meanwhile, he was taking a t-shirt cannon, just shooting blue jeans into the crowd.
Yeah, blue jeans and Bibles.
So yeah, it's interesting because I guess if the policy doesn't get up, then the Conservatives, which make up this coalition, are going to go, whoa.
God, Israel's had a fucking absolute time of it the last couple of years because there was that sort of like center-left coalition that they had together where it's like, yeah, we can run things without Netanyahu and we can keep this going, and they couldn't agree on anything, and then that collapsed, and then Netanyahu's come back into power with this far-right thing, and it doesn't seem like that's working. Like, this could be again on the border of collapse. It's like they've had something like 5 elections in the last couple of years or something. Like the country is in pretty serious turmoil.
Meanwhile, they're still building on Palestinian settlements. And
if there's one thing, we can agree on, it's the settlements. Yeah.
But this is the thing: is that
Palestine.
If this conservative section of the coalition government sort of gets their way, then you're going to see much more of that kind of stuff. You're going to see what is relatively secular in terms of like the LGBT. I can't remember the acronym, but that community, they've got a relatively secular society in regards to that in Israel. But you would see that have more pressure on it if some of these policies that these right wingers are suggesting that would really start to affect things.
Yeah.
So it'll be it'll be interesting to see how they call him like a political magician, right? Where he's able to just pull rabbits out of his hat. He's been prime minister now collectively for like over a decade, if you add his different terms up. And before that, I believe, was, a powerhouse with maybe in the military, if I'm not wrong. I could be wrong. So, yeah, I mean, what happens, with this sort of next month or two could very well define the future of that region of the Middle East.
Yeah,
just to put it lightly.
Netanyahu's such a piece of shit. I thought we'd seen the back of him when he left office, and it's sad to see him back in and running things. And sort of the idea is that people think he's sort of got to maintain political power in order to keep from the walls closing in to prevent his own indictment.
Indictment. That seems to be the cynical thing, right? Is he's trying to head off the judges at the pass.
Yeah.
To be like, well, you can't charge me because I'm going to.
When you have no legs.
Yeah, it's a weird situation.
I just like, like you said, like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, like these are pretty big modern metropolitan cities with, as you say, like thriving gay scenes, and like it seems like a big chunk of Israel is pretty progressive and modern, and it's just these, they've got a big tech sort of sector and stuff as well. Like they're pretty well known for tech and cybersecurity and things like that. Like there's a contingent of the population that wants to be like a modern nation, and then you've just got these like religious zealots and hyper conservatives that are just wanting to drown the country in the ways of the old. I hope they get through it.
Okay.
Yep.
Happy note to end on.
Yay! On that note,
how long have we been going for?
Too long. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social media that do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and motherfucking Twitch. Streaming live at 4-ish p.m. on Sundays again. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me down to Parliament, where I'll be heckling and being cautioned as a result of that.
Thought you were going to say Nazi
doing some Zig Heils.
Adam!
I did whip out the accent earlier in the show to a thing that context didn't quite make sense, but no, I'm not going to go that far.
Yep.
We will ask the questions. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We will see you next week.